I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is hard to name because I'm covering so many different things. One thing I'm covering is Ireland as the land of the Pharaohs. But I'll also be looking at the debt elephant and the money lenders, and whether there is a royal flush that went on 333 years ago and is happening again now. I'll be talking about unicorns and red-headed mermen and Atlantis and all kinds of juicy things. So we'll get started, but in the meantime, I'm offering you ranunculus, which are as fun to say as they are to see. I will be reading this, so since you are a watcher, I suggest you also go later to thirdparadigm.substack.com for the 3 embedded videos that are excellent and some wonderful AI art from Amy. Welcome, fellow bloodhounds of the Bible-spiracy. Is it any accident that that word includes the word piracy? The empire has always been the pirates, stealing the inheritance of the people, our words, our stories, our homes, our land, our innate knowledge of right and wrong, and our connection to the sacred. What they have substituted are words that cast spells to blind us and bind us in obedience. I've long thought that the global tongues are all languages of conquest. We don't have words in which to think from the perspective of people and place. But some new information shows that Latin itself may have been a synthetic invention, one that never developed from an indigenous seed, never sprouted from an indigenous language. That would explain a lot. In a comment to Neferhotep, I said that each of these twisted stories we've been told are made up of larger stories in the words. Each word is a worldview, a shortcut that encapsulates a constellation of assumptions and distills them down to a way of seeing. Think about the word encapsulate, a poison pill. Our words are a metanoia, a way of thinking before we think we're thinking, a paradigm that captures our imagination and holds it hostage. The shape of that paradigm is a pyramid. On my last post, Mary wrote, "I've always wondered if the Bible's real purpose was to subjugate the masses." I replied, "I think it's even sneakier. The Bible's purpose is to get the masses to subjugate each other, one tier of the pyramid crushing another, so that all that's left for those at the top is to flip a lever of a well-oiled machine, one finger subjugation." The debt elephant. The same authors who've usurped the stories from other cultures and twisted them to their purpose have also designed the imperial form of money, laws, and governance. Which came first? From the research in my book, How to Dismantle an Empire, I suspect money. I cite David Graeber on the military coinage slavery complex. He writes, "In fact, the entire Roman Empire at its height could be understood as a vast machine for the extraction of precious metals and that coining and distribution to the military, combined with taxation policies designed to encourage conquered populations to adopt coins in their everyday transactions. The ancient Greek hierarchy, which means inheritance order of the archons, allowed someone to be in the voting assembly and to move up the hierarchy based on their contribution to the military. This contribution was measured in barley, so it depended on slave labor and landless serfs, controlled by fief lords whose own militaries prevented use of the land without payment. In another word inversion, this is called democracy, which means rule by the people, but only included landlords and warlords. The Greek system of primogeniture disinherited later-born sons and all women. Like the Bible, when Esau implores, "Don't you have more than one blessing?" the right to rule everyone else went to one son. The family became the building block of hierarchy, with each father the archon of his own household and subservient to the patriarch of his clan. For those who think the empire is female, I beg to differ. As I write in my book, this period, around 500 BCE, also saw the rise of the trained professional army and, in particular, the sought-after Greek mercenary warrior. Solon's new hierarchy was so effective that more soldiers were produced than Greece could use, and they became their own commodity class. Although land within Greece was reserved for the eldest son through an arbitrary system of inheritance called primogeniture, younger sons could make their fortunes on the battlefield. While rulers with imperial aspirations coveted the trained armies, there was a hitch. The kings needed to find a way to feed and equip them during their conquest and occupation. Moving around herds of cattle and weapons of provisions was risky and laborious, and the soldiers who survived had to be rewarded in a form they could bring back home without carrying off the treasure for which the invasion was launched. The solution was to pay the mercenary armies in units made from the melted spoils of conquest, but stamped with a higher value. The real genius of the scheme, however, was requiring the inhabitants of conquered territories to pay taxes to the king in the freshly minted coin of the realm, rather than paying the king a portion of the harvest that had to be transported, stored, and distributed. Now the conquered peoples would have to provide food, shelter, equipment, sex, or other services directly to the soldiers to get that needed coins. The coins would gravitate back to the royal treasury, the replenished soldiers would conquer the next territory, and the cycle would start again. In the phrase coin of the realm, realm is a word that derives from regal and rule. It means kingdom, domain under a sovereign, royal jurisdiction. And the word sovereign, that should mean self-rule, has been usurped to be rule over others. It takes little imagination to see how Greece and Rome, if they were even different, would end up amassing coins from every realm and every ruler, and lending them back to the rulers, who then would be subject to them. Perhaps Greece ruled from behind and Rome governed in front. Just like the Bible, taxation was a means to get the masses to subjugate each other. Provide for the army to conquer your neighbors so you don't fall into debt slavery. Those who think that gold is not a fiat currency would do well to note that it was the original gangster fiat currency. And for those who rebelled against taxation, as the original Judeans did, was reserved the worst form of slavery in the mines. So that was creating more of those precious metals that would destroy the precious metal of humanity. Coins over kings. An interview that I watched recently adds to this intrigue by combining mystical rituals of power and capitulation with biblical themes, City of London banking laws, Atlantean tribes, Irish pyramids, unicorns, and red-headed giants of Egypt. If all that wasn't enough to get my attention, the interview is by Fintan Dunn, who interviewed me when I first aired my suspicions about Robert Malone. In this mind-blowing video, Fintan interviews Andrew Power on his spell-breaking book, Ireland, Land of the Pharaohs. We begin at dawn in the River Boyne on July 1st, 1690. On one side of the river stands the Catholic King James II with his Jacobite army. On the other side is his Protestant nephew and son-in-law, William of Orange, who had deposed his uncle a year prior, although James was still supported by Parliament. This is seen as the decisive battle between Catholics and Protestants in their senseless religious war. History cites the ineptitude of James in sending 2/3 of his army to Roughgrange to counter a quarter of William's men crossing there. But that location was a swampy ravine where neither side could cross, and they sat out the rest of the battle. James ordered a retreat that was guarded by the cavalry, thwarted any engagement from either side. With remarkably few casualties for 60,000 men, James surrendered, demoralizing his troops. But Andrew Power has a different take. His evidence shows that this was acting out an ancient ritual of Horus, enacted when the sun god crosses the Horus line of the horizon. The shape of the Boyne parallels the shape of the Nile, and both mirror the Milky Way. It was entirely symbolic, and no evidence of battle has been found. James represented the power of the Vatican and the legitimacy of the House of Stuart, tracing back to ancient Egypt. The House of Orange were usurpers, legitimized by marriage to the daughter of James. William was backed by the City of London and the Khazarian Jewish bankers. His retinue included the Royal Black Knights of the Camp of Israel, a word that Andrew confirms as the trinity of Isis, Ra, and El. This ritual capitulation signified the transfer of the right to rule to the House of Orange, and most importantly, the right to the City of London to print the money. One governs in front, and one rules from behind. The Ark of the Covenant. This is only the beginning of the mystery, however. At nearby Newgrange, there is a watertight megalith built 5,200 years ago in the Stone Age and encompassing about an acre. It predates Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza by about 500 years. A long passage that leads to a cruciform chamber with 3 alcoves aligns with the rising sun at the winter solstice. Andrew then cites 4,000-year-old mummies in China with extraordinarily tall stature and red hair. Preserved wall paintings in Egypt show people of tall stature with fair skin and red hair. Celtic legends depict an advanced race of people who were 12 to 16 feet tall. The knowledge of celestial movements, physics, and building precision required for Newgrange defies any notion of primitive. The creation stories of many cultures include a time when the waters of the sky were separated from the waters of the earth. There are stories of cataclysm, including water and flood. Noah is one such story, in which the place where the ark lands is called Arat. The Neolithic ceremonial kingship site along the Boyne River is called the Hill of Tara. Arat is Tara backwards. The Hill of Tara embodies sacred kingship and was the spiritual and political center of Ireland. A tomb called the Mound of the Hostages was built 5,000 years ago as a smaller version of Newgrange, with the cremated remains of up to 500 people, each arranged with burial goods. At the summit of the hill is the Fort of the Kings, with 2 massive joined circles, like an infinity loop. Within one monument, called the Royal Seat, is the Stone of Destiny, which would let out a screech that could be heard in all of Ireland when it was touched by a true king. So says the legend, maybe a variation of pulling a sword from a stone to dancing brooms. Red-headed mermen of Atlantis. Andrew puts this together with the Atlantean tribes of the mystery schools of Egypt. To separate speculation from source material, I suggest listening to the interview or buying the book if you can find it. I have not been able to locate it. I'm relying on notes and memory. The theory goes that the Earth was covered by a vapor layer held in by a thin membrane. This, with the closer stars and sun, made the world lush and verdant, a Garden of Eden. It also allowed for taller statures and feats that would require great strength in our thin atmosphere. Along with this, Andrew has a metaphysical theory for their intuitive knowledge and skills. He looks at the bicameral mind as having a left side that deals with symbols and linear time, and a right side that is directly connected to all that is. And our brains squeeze awareness back and forth through the narrow passage of the corpus callosum. We translate everything intuitive into symbols and send it back for a reality check. Perhaps at that time, people were of one mind, communicating with each other and with God without symbols. We were in a place of knowing. The brain itself was joined, and perhaps mind superseded all the separate brains. That would fit my theology, that we and God are metaphorically like the two sides of the brain, masculine and feminine, but in reality, we are one with God, one mind. Into this humid Eden, a comet fell, Lucifer the Bright with the long hair of the woman. It burst the membrane, and all the vapor collapsed into a flood that covered the earth. When the water receded and became the seas, the mists of their northern home were a cold cloak blocking out the sun. So they went south, following the Son of God, as it was called, and came to Egypt. And now for a little unicorn intermission. Finton and Andrew expand on the impact of losing the direct connection with God and dividing the mind with symbols instead of reality. It relied on others now to hear God, with the potential to hijack that for malign purposes. The authority system was taken over by the priestly caste of Israel, who split with the house of Yehuda. The symbol of divine power taken by the House of Orange was the dragon or sea serpent. What was usurped by the House of Stuart was the lion and the unicorn, or monosaurus. These are aligned with constellations and convey divine protection. These are stolen, like the stories and the legacies. My friend Amy, who does What's in a Name, wrote a series of AI prompts while feeling helpless about the Palestinians. She wanted to convey a magical protection and conjure something that would guard them and gladden their hearts. Although they're only pictures churned out by an algorithm, I've been keeping them on my desktop and rotating them because they comfort me and make me feel peaceful. We who are aware of the misery the world contains don't know all its mysteries. I would like to believe that there's a place of sanctuary in the worst of circumstances. Maybe that place is in the mind or the mind that contains us all. It can't hurt to dream a little dream of escape on a one-horned horse. So to see those, please go to my Substack. And to bring this full circle, I'm ending with We Are the Sacrifice. Here we are, 333 years after the ritual sacrifice of Ireland to the Khazarian Jewish bankers of the city of London and their merchant prince in his counting house. Rothschild Bauer? Merchant prince is a direct quote from Judea Declares War on Germany in 1933. Judea had considered itself at that time to be a country without borders, encompassing the globe, with its own merchant prince who ruled over a country or a world. On the Substack, I've linked a very interesting 10-minute video which makes a lot of connections between different things and the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The author is Israel Diego Rivera Genai. He says, Francis Scott Key, a Freemason, wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. Baltimore has the Ravens and is the home of Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote The Raven about the fall of the House of Usher, which is America. Genai looks at the parallels with this short film called I, Pet Goat 2 by Heliofont that includes the tearing of the U.S. flag in half. It's visually stunning and includes much of the Egyptian symbology of Jesus as the sun god Ra in a long boat, maybe by Set, heading towards the Horus line. There are meteors, which the flight of a helicopter with the bridge footage mimics, and that other is a 7-minute video on I, Pet Goat 2, and that, again, is something you really should see. It's just fascinating. Genai looks at the ship being named Dolly that ran into the bridge as in Salvador, meaning salvation. The code name for secession plans on the death of King Charles III is Operation Menai Bridge, according to Wikipedia, a bridge in Wales. For the first Queen Elizabeth, it was Operation Tay Bridge, and Operation Fourth Bridge for Prince Philip. For Elizabeth II, it was London Bridge is Down, and also Project Unicorn, since she died at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Now, Andrew Powers has pointed out that Belfast actually was Balfast, as in the god, and Balmoral is clearly the name of the god. I think we need to add that Baltimore is Baltimore or Balmoral. Pluto was in the same position when the bridge was hit as it was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. And I know that Isaac Middle of Down the Wombat Hole is on that. Genai connects the Baltimore Bridge to his predicted death of King Charles III, which he believes will be announced on the eclipse, or the solstice, I'm forgetting which, and the rise of William, who, through the Spencers, is a Stuart and related to George Washington. He states that all of Diana's memorials were dedicated to Isis, which is also the Statue of Liberty. And how did I miss that the U.S.-created nemesis is called ISIS? Genai connects the Alice in Wonderland girl who's sitting in a circle on a checkered floor as Kate Middleton, but she looks like Princess Diana, and the film was released in 2012. She drops an apple that rolls across the black and white floor, stopping at a sinister shoe and splitting in half where worms spiral out and join to create a stem that opens onto a lotus. Now, he states that the shirt that Kate Middleton was wearing in that doctored photo was called a lotus. Metamorphosis and rebirth in their own image. The bridge is, in Genai's analysis, foreboding at the end of a corrupt America and beginning at the eclipse. If it targets that corruption, however, it will have to take them down, not us. If you're ready for more and you don't have Substack handy, here is the interview that Finton did of me called Conspiracy Researchers and Robert Malone. And then this is I Mage a Nation, based on Amy's beautiful art and looking at how we would imagine the kind of nation that we would like to give to the world. Thank you for watching.